Hey everyone, it is Misty and I couldn't resist coming back to see what is in store for this fun panel that we opened yesterday. It is day 21, so let's see what we have. Alrighty here, there we go. 21 is what we need. So let's see what's inside. Oh my goodness, how cute is this? It's a little simple quilty shoulder bag, and it looks like these little squares would be the perfect place to add some embroidery and make it your own. I love that. And they've even stored some goodies inside. So you've got your hardware, some fusible, and the pattern to go with this. So let's slip this back inside here because our favorite elf, Courtney, is gonna give us a great tutorial to show us how to make this. Let me get this back in here for her. And we can pass this off. We can all make this fun bag together. I'll see you guys soon. Happy holidays.
Hi everybody, it's Courtney with Missouri Star, also known as Jenny's Elf. Let's get into our package. Thanks, Misty, for handing this over to me. I am going to show you what to do with your panel from 2 days ago and what you're going to do with the hardware. This great bag of hardware, we've got some D-clamps or some D-rings in here and some swivel hooks. You've got your canvas strapping and some cording. You've even got some fusible interfacing, and you've got your pattern. You've got this great pretty panel. And I'm going to show you how to turn it into this really cute bag. And guess what? There's no zippers. Don't you love us right now? So let's get your panel out. I'm going to get mine ironed and then we'll get started. All right, so the first thing we're going to do, I went ahead and pressed my panel. You're going to lay the panel in front of you with your patchwork side to your left, okay? Or I suppose if you're a lefty, you'd go the other side, but for all intents and purposes, we're going to do it this way. The first thing you're going to do is cut between the cream fabric or the cream or tan and the blue fabric. And I'm just going to willy-nilly here. You can, of course, use a ruler. Now you've got plenty of room here. We're not doing everything. You've got a half an inch or an inch here when we go to cut and here as well. So if you don't get exactly on the line, don't panic. It's all good. We're going to clean up those edges in a little bit. All right, so I'm going to put this aside for a moment. All right, the next step in the direction is we're going to cut a ½ inch above where the patchwork ends. So I'm going to lay my ruler with the ½ inch mark right on the top of our patchwork there, and I'm going to cut this off. And then I'm going to pull this down towards me. My arms aren't that long. And I'm going to lay this down so it's a ½ inch out and cut that off. Okay. We're going to cut this cream piece to 3 inches wide. So I'm going to lay that on my mat. And see, I've got a little bit of room there. When you cut this, you want to make sure that that fold at the bottom is nice and straight along one of your horizontal lines, and that will keep your strips straight so you won't get a dog leg. Sometimes when we cut our fabric, if this fold isn't nice and flat, and if you're crooked down here, that's what causes dog legs, what we call dog legs sometimes, because they're crooked sometimes. And then I'm going to lay this here, and I'm going to cut this little sliver off at the beginning. I'm going to get rid of that. And then I'm going to cut my 3 inches. So see, you've got plenty, not plenty, but you've got enough here to make it even. And then you're going to cut this 34.5 inches long. So I don't have that length here to show you, but just lay it out on your mat. If you've got a 36-inch long mat, just lay it out there and cut it 34.5. If you don't, I put it at the edge of my mat and measure 17.25. And that's half of 34.5. So that's a good way to do it. So here we have I'll do it 17 is 35 1/4, so I'm going to do that here for you. And there we go. And this is our band that's going to go around the top. We're going to cut our main piece. We're going to measure down 10.5 inches, and that's how wide we're going to cut our piece here. So 24. We're going to cut a little bit of this bottom off. That's okay. That's going to be in the seam allowance. 10.5. And I didn't cut much of that patchwork off. It was mostly white, so that's good. We're going to lay this flat. We're going to go over 9 squares. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And we're going to cut that off. Then we're going to go over 9 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there we go. I'm just going to sliver trim this up a little bit. Okay, now these should be 17 inches long. So this is a hair over, so I'm just going to center that a little bit. There's one. And here I've got some selvage here, and this is where I'm going to get rid of that. So see, I wasn't worried about that because I knew we were going to get rid of that at some point. All right, so now we have our 2 exterior pieces cut and ready to go. Now, if you would like to embroider on your pieces or quilt it, this would be the time to do it. There is a lovely diagram in here that shows where you don't want to put your embroidery because it will be caught in the seam allowances. So you want to kind of stay away from about halfway down this first square, and I would stay within that square on either side. We've got like a half a square, a little bit more, and then a square across the bottom. So I'd keep my embroidery in these middle 3 by 8, 7, what is that? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, 3 by 7 squares. So I would keep my embroidery in there. And that way you know it'll show on your bag because you don't want to go to all that work and then you can't see your pretty embroidery. Okay? If you are going to quilt it, don't quilt it a lot because if you quilt it a lot, it's going to take up, your piece will shrink a little bit and then you won't get the size you need and your lining won't fit. So just be careful if you're going to quilt it. Okay? So now we're going to cut our interfacing. So I've got my pieces cut and I went ahead and ironed them. When you iron your fusible interfacing to your fabric, make sure that the bumpy side is on the wrong side of your fabric. Okay, you're going to lay it in the middle of the fabric. There's going to be a little bit of the seam allowance showing, and that's good because you don't want to catch this, your interfacing in the seam allowance. It makes it more bulky. Okay, so that's why we had you cut the pieces a little smaller than your actual pieces. And then I just use a dry iron and it doesn't take long. I've got it on the hottest setting and just make sure it's fused very nicely. And then you've got these 3 pieces and interfaced, and those are the only 3 pieces that you're going to need with the interfacing on them. Now we're going to go to our lining and we're going to cut and prep our lining. Now I'm going to cut apart these pieces. I'm going to cut this long piece off and then I'm going to cut these 3 pieces off. 3 cuts, 4 pieces. This cream one is going to be the base of our outside, which is what I just interfaced. And these 3 pieces, you can choose. You've got 2 of these pieces are going to be your pocket and one's going to be the bottom of your interior. So you can pick which one you want where. You've got 3 pretty choices. Now we're going to cut this. This is your interior piece, your lining. We're going to cut that 10.5 by 33.5. And see, I have plenty here. I'm going to again make sure my fold is on that horizontal line there. And this will be by 33.5, so I'll do the same thing, lay it on here, cut it half of 33.5. And there's your lining. And then you're going to cut one of these, whichever one you want for your bottom. You're going to cut it 7.5 by 11. And your 2 pockets, you're going to cut them at 8 by 12. Okay, so they'll be a little bit bigger. So I'm going to go ahead and cut those, and I'll be right back and I'll show you how to do the pockets. So these are the 2 fabrics that I selected for my pockets. Okay, so all you're going to do is you're going to fold them in half, right sides together. And with a 1/4 inch seam, we're going to go up either side, both sides, not either side. We want to go up both sides. Okay, so now we're going to turn it right side out. All right. This is where you get your little pointy job out, whether it's a chopstick or all those cool tools they have out on the market now. I'm going to go ahead and hit this with an iron just to lay it nice and flat. And then you'll do the same thing to your other pocket. We're doing the exact same thing. Then you're going to go back and you're going to top stitch this. So I go down, I'll just go down 1/4 inch, just like I'm sewing a regular seam. All right. So I go ahead and top stitch this. Across the top, I use my 1/4 inch seam, and I'll usually, even if the directions in other bags don't say to top stitch on the pocket, I do because I think it's a nice finished, it gives it a little bit of, So I already have this other one done. So I have the green one placed on here. Now this, it is directional. And if you don't put it on the right way, it's going to be fine. It's the inside of a bag. But the flowers are facing up. So I have the little stems facing down. And this first pocket, it goes 1.5 inches. It gets placed about 1.5 inches in. And then I top stitch down either side. And then this one gets placed 10 inches over. So I'm just going to lay this on my mat. It gets placed 10 inches over from that one. So 26, 36. So that one's going to go right there. Trim these out of the way. And what I'm going to do when I do this, I am going to run a little stitch across the bottom, a basting stitch about 1/8 of an inch in, and that's going to hold it in place before I do my stitching down either side. It's just a little bit of assurance. You can pin it, but I like putting a little stitch in there. Plus, I know I'll catch it. I will catch that in the bottom seam as well. And you can use a longer stitch if you like. I'm just going to leave it the stitch it is, stitch length. And I will back stitch when I'm sewing at the top of the pocket, and that reinforces the pocket a little bit because you're going to be shoving your hand down in there to grab whatever's in that pocket that you need. So I like it to be extra secure. Well, and you don't have to back stitch at the bottom because that's where we're going to sew our bottom in, so we don't have to worry about back stitching there. Now we're ready to put the bottom in. All right, so we've got our pockets sewn in. So we're going to fold this in half with our raw edges meeting, and we're going to sew. Now you want to watch with this pattern. We go back and forth between 1/4 inch seam allowance and 1/2 inch. So you want to make sure at whatever point you're in the pattern, you're using the correct seam allowance. So this is using the 1/4 inch seam, and then we're going to leave a hole so you can flip our bag right side out when we're done. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and sew that seam. And I back stitch when I'm at wherever the hole is. I back stitch because I want that to be real secure when I go to flip it. I don't want to be breaking any stitches. Okay. All right. And it says to press this seam open. So I'm going to do that. I might be doing that. There we go. Okie dokie. Now we have our bottom that we cut. This is 7.5 by 11. We are going to make little dots in each corner that are a 1/2 inch in. So I am down, I'm on my ruler, I'm at a 1/2 inch there and a 1/2 inch there. And I'm going to make a little dot with my pen. I'm just making sure, yep, you can't see that pen mark through there. Use whatever writing utensil you want here. Use something that you can see. Okay, now we're going to sew this into this. Looks hard, but I'm going to show you a trick. All right, so the first thing we're going to do, we're going to put your dot right at one of those seam allowances. So the seam allowance is right there, and I'm going to lay my dot right there. So I'm going to put this right here. And then I'm going to start sewing right along there, and I am going to use a 1/2 inch seam allowance for this, so be careful. Don't use a 1/4 inch, it's not going to fit. Okay, and to make sure that we're at the bottom, you want to make sure that we are at the bottom of the bag, which we are, because that's the bottom of the pocket. When I first went to make this, guess what I did? I started sewing at the top. I know that's hard to believe because I never do anything wrong. But we all know that's not true. I'm going to find the 1/2 inch mark on my machine here. I'm going to line this up better than it is. There we go. All right, and I'm going to back stitch. And it feels like when you're doing this 1/2 inch thing that it's like when garment sewers turn into quilters, you feel like your seam allowance is so small. This feels like it's so huge, but that's what we need to do here. Now we're going to sew right up to that dot, and then I'm going to not do what the pattern says, but I'm going to show you what. Okay, so I'm at the dot and I'm going to backstitch. Okay, and I'm going to lift this foot up because I want to see where that dot is. Get up there. Okay. All right, so I'm going to come up to this dot. There we go. Perfect. All right, so in the pattern, it tells you to go ahead and just turn it and do this kind of thing and move this out of the way. It can be done because one of the gals, one of the elf's helpers did do it that way. However, I found an easier, sneakier way. I got under here and I'm going to cut my thread, which it says not to do, but I'm going to do it. And I am going to make a cut with my scissors straight in towards where that dot is. Okay? And then guess what? I can pull that nice and flat. Easy peasy. It was easier than trying to fight with turning that corner. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put my needle down right at that dot again. I'm going to back stitch. And I'm just going to do this, the same thing all the way around. Okay, I'll show you one more. I'm going to come up to this dot. I'm going to back stitch. I'm going to take my piece out. I'm going to cut this. You don't want to get too close to your dot, but you want to get close enough where you can maneuver. And this just turns real nice. Look at that. Perfecto. And you're just going to do this until you get all the way around to the end of your bag. All right, so it looks kind of goofy now, but let's turn it right side out. And It's all done. Look at that bottom. It worked. That's always a good sign, right? And there's our hole that we left for turning. And when you hold it like this, yes, that seam is off kilter, and that's fine. That's how it's supposed to be. I panicked at first, but that's exactly how it's supposed to be. So let's get ready and we'll sew our outside together. All right, so now in this section, we're going to need our 2 pieces of 2-inch strapping. I went ahead and cut those. And you need your 2 D-rings, and you're just gonna fold them in half. And then we're gonna go ahead and I just basted these together, make sure that they're nice and secure. I just went ahead and used a regular seam allowance. Okay, now we're ready to sew our sides together. You want to make sure that your top, both of your tops are facing this way, okay? Don't do this. Okay, you want to make sure that your 2 tops are together. And you're going to align your D-ring with the second square down from the top. Okay, we're going to do that on both sides. And then let's go ahead, before I base this, let's go ahead and base these in place. And that way I know they're not going to move on me. So you've got a lot of stuff going through the machine there. So I'm going to base this in place with an 1/8-inch seam allowance or thereabouts, just to hold it in place while I'm sewing the top pieces together. Just remember to keep your raw edges with the raw edge of the bag. There we go. Now I'm ready. Okay, right sides together. We're going to sew down each side here. We're going to make sure that's turned in to the middle. We're going to use a 1/4-inch seam allowance here. And just be careful when you're going over that webbing. Okay, now our outside is sewn together. Now we are going to put the bottom in just like you did for the lining. Mark all 4 corners, line it up, line the 1 dot up with your 1 seam allowance, and start going around until you're done. Get back to the beginning, and now we have our top totally done, except we need to add our cording. So let's do our cording. Okay, now we're ready to do our cord. This is way easier than what you might think too. We have this cut. It's 3 inches by 34.5. And you are just going to fold over both ends, just about 1/4 of an inch and 1/4 of an inch in again. We'll hit it with the iron. And then we'll top stitch that down, okay? All right, now here comes the slick part. Went ahead and both of my edges are folded over. We're going to lay this cord right down the middle there. Fold this in half. You can use clips or pins, however you want. And we're going to sew down here with a 3/4 inch seam allowance. We're throwing all sorts of seam allowances at you guys. And that'll just keep that cording in. This prevents us from having to thread the cording through something, which anybody that's had a hoodie cord come out knows how much of a pain that is sometimes to have to get that threaded through. When I lose my hoodie cords, to me, that's an indication that the hoodie doesn't want the cord in it anymore, so I usually don't bother putting it in. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead. I am going to backstitch here at the beginning and the end. And I'm going to find my 3/8 inch seam allowance. 3/4 inch, I'm sorry. 3/4 inch seam allowance. See, I don't want to go that big either. All right. Now what we're going to do is you're going to clip this or pin it. You're going to find the middle, so middle of your bag, whichever you want the front to be, okay? And you're going to want to find the middle, so I just kind of fold this seam to seam, come out this way, and that's about where my middle is. I'll leave a little seam, I'm going to go ahead and clip it. And then you're going to start and clip this all the way around, raw edges with raw edge. All right, so we'll go ahead and pin this all the way around. You're going to get over here to this end, and you're going to have room, and that's right. You should have a space there so you don't have to worry about it meeting up. It can, I have like 1.5 inches there. That's great. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch this on, and I will meet you back here, and we'll put our cord lock on. All right, so we're ready to put our little cord lock on. This is very easy. So this just presses together at the top and makes the hole, okay? And for ease to get it through there, because see how my cord is frayed, I went ahead and wrapped a piece of clear tape around the edge of there. I'm gonna press this together and get it through that hole. There we go. All right, that one's on. And then let's tape this side. And I just squish that as tight as I can. And you want to make sure that you put this cord on this side of the hole and this one this side. Okay, so there you go, and then you press that to make it tighter or looser, okay? And then I just cut these off. And I make a knot. All right, and then I'll do the same thing to the other one. And now we're ready to put them inside one another and finish our bag. I'll see you right back here. All right, so now I have my lining. I've got it right side out. I have the outside of my bag. I have it wrong side out, and I am going to put my lining inside of the bag. Okay, you can see there where we did our casing. And I'm going to line up my seam with one of my outside seams. And I'm going to clip this going all the way around. And then I'm going to sew this with a 1/2 inch seam allowance starting at my pin and go all the way around, back stitching both times. So I'm going to go ahead and sew that, and I'll see you right back, and we'll pop our bag right side out. All right, we've sewn around the top. We're ready to pull our bag out. So I've got the hole we left in the lining earlier. And I'm a bad one. If it says 3 inches, I leave 2. Like, I never leave a big enough hole, kind of. So it always comes out, but I think it comes out a little harder than it would have been if I followed the directions. All right, we're getting close. Once you get past a certain point, then it goes easy. All right. Here it comes. There we go. Yay. All right. You shove that lining in there. Looks great. Yippee. All right. Now you're going to go around and you're going to top stitch right below where your bag meets. So you're going to go, I usually go about a 1/8 of an inch below it. And I just top stitch around there, which top stitch, stitch, it's the same thing. Usually when I top stitch, I use a little bit longer seam allowance, or seam allowance stitch length, is a little bit longer stitch length. So I usually go up to a 3.2 maybe. So I press that down there and I'll just run a nice top stitch along there. Now we're ready to do our handle, and I just want to show you one little part on the handle on how to do the hardware. And I'll grab my handle parts and I'll be right back. All right. I've got all my parts to my handle. You just feed that through your swivel hook like that. You fold it back on itself. And you're going to stitch over that. And I usually stitch back and forth 3 or 4 times to get it nice and sturdy. Okay, now on the other end, you're going to feed your little D thing here. You're going to go up over the top. This is the adjustable slider. Go across the top, then you're going to feed your other swivel hook on here. Now this is the part that always goofed me, was hard to understand when I started making bags. So you have this, you're going to go and feed this back under there and come back towards the hook. Okay, so I usually push this up a little bit. It takes a little maneuvering, but it's not hard. Except when you have long nails and they're getting in the way. There we go. Come on through there. It's almost coming. There we go. All right. There's that. Then you fold this back on itself, and this is kind of where it gets weird. Fold this under, and you're going to stitch it to this piece. Now, the way to test this is you should still be able to move this freely, and you can. So that's how you know that you stitched it to the right spot. Okay, so we're just going to sew that in place. I might have to come out a little further so I can get under the machine. There we go. And again, I would sew over this a couple times to make it secure. Don't show that. Remember that time Courtney said over a D-ring? Okay. So there's your strap, all ready to put on your bag. You just clip it to your D-ring, just like this one. and your bag's all ready to fill with whatever you want. If you decide you don't want to do the bag, you can cut up your parts, the outside pieces, and do what I did. I just sewed the little squares together, cut out a maple leaf shape, and put some chenille around the edge, and I got a sweatshirt out of it. So if you don't want to do the bag, don't feel pressured. You can do whatever you want. I hope you enjoyed this project. Happy holidays.